Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we are tackling something really fundamental. It's this challenge that I think trips up a lot of technical professionals,
Hmm.
but it especially hits home for, the Windows and Azure System Administrators out there.
Oh, yeah.
We're talking about that crippling feeling, the burden of perfectionism.
Yeah, it's huge in IT.
We heard from a listener, actually, who's got this massive backlog. You know the
Yeah.
list, automation scripts, vital documentation, those patching strategies that are just always overdue.
Always next week's problem.
Exactly. And they're all delayed. Why? Because the thought is, well, that first draft, that initial output, it just won't be perfect. It won't be flawless right out of the gate.
And that dread, it's real. I mean, think about it. The sysadmin world, it demands super high reliability.
Absolutely. Downtime is the enemy.
So we're kind of wired almost biologically to avoid failure. And that instinct, while good for stability, it often paralyzes us right at the starting line.
So you've got the long hours, the constant firefighting.
Right? Putting out fires left and right.
And the only way out, really, is building those structural things, like automation or solid docs. But those tasks feel way too massive to start perfectly.
Precisely. So our mission today, really, is to unpack these core strategies. They're surprisingly simple, actually, coming from James Clear's work, specifically focusing on the power of imperfect starts.
Yeah.
We want to help you transform that really dangerous, I'll do it later, when I have the perfect plan mentality.
Right, the plan that never quite materializes.
Exactly. Into immediate action, constructive action, yes, but, and this is key, intentionally messy action to begin with.
Okay, let's unpack this. So the goal here isn't just like finding ways to be more efficient. It's deeper than that.
Much deeper. It's a mindset shift.
We're looking for that shortcut. Not a technical shortcut, but a mental one. A shortcut to getting momentum going.
That's it. Shifting the focus entirely. Away from chasing some mythical, flawless first delivery.
Which never happens anyway.
Right. And towards building consistency. Powerfully building tiny, maybe even ugly, imperfect habits.
So if you listening right now walk away with just one thing today, it should probably be this conviction that a messy start, that actually guarantees progress. Whereas waiting for perfection, well, that guarantees zero progress. Nada.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Zero.
Zero. Okay, so the central idea here, the core philosophy, it's that the biggest enemy of getting things done, especially big technical projects, it isn't usually a lack of skill.
Right. Most sysadmins are sharp. They know their stuff, PowerShell, Azure architecture.
Exactly. They're highly capable. The problem is psychological inertia. It's the sheer scope of the projects, right? Automating an entire VDI deployment or overhauling the patching system. It just feels huge, intimidating.
Creates a mental wall.
Totally.
Yeah.
So we wait for this this mythical perfect window of time, energy, inspiration.
Yeah. Oh, I'll tackle that next Tuesday when things quiet down. Spoiler.
No.
They never do.
They never do.
Yeah.
And so that big, important project, it just sits there at rest, gathering dust on the backlog.
And the psychological cost of that inertia, it's massive, isn't it? Especially in tech. It's not just the time you're losing on the project itself.
Yeah.
It's the mental overhead, that constant nagging feeling in the back of your mind that this important thing is just sitting there, undone, weighing on you.
Absolutely. And that leads us straight into this principle, let's call it Newton's first law of productivity, the law of inertia.
Okay, physics lesson time.
Just a little. The principle is simple. Objects at rest stay at rest, and objects in motion stay in motion, unless acted upon by an external force.
Right, basic physics.
So in our professional world, that object at rest, that's the unwritten PowerShell script. It's the blank Confluence page for documentation. It's the Azure policy definition you haven't started drafting.
Sitting there, motionless.
Exactly. And the most critical step isn't finishing the whole thing in one go. It's applying that little bit of external force. The start, that tiny action that breaks the inertia.
Okay, but here's the challenge I see, and what our listener probably feels. When you do finally sit down, ready to apply that force, you suddenly realize, whoa, this isn't a quick 2-hour job. This script needs research, parameter validation, security checks, proper error handling, logging. The complexity just hits you.
And it pushes you right back into planning mode. Right?
Yeah.
Okay, I need to map this all out perfectly first.
Exactly, which defeats the purpose.
Right. And that is precisely where the power of the imperfect start comes in. It's the antidote. The source material offers this. Well, it's profoundly simple, but incredibly effective insight. It's called the 2-minute rule.
The 2-minute rule. Okay, tell me more.
The rule is this. Find a version of the task, no matter how big and scary it seems, that you can literally start in under 2 minutes.
Under 2 minutes.
Yeah. And this is crucial. The goal isn't completion. It's not about getting anything substantial done in those 2 minutes. It's purely about initiating motion, overcoming that initial wall of resistance.
Okay, let's make this concrete. Let's apply it directly to that blank screen fear. The sysadmin staring at an empty PowerShell ISE or VS Code window. What does a 2-minute start look like for something meaty, like, say, automating user onboarding in Azure AD?
Okay, great example. So the full script to complex, right? Connect to Azure AD, check licenses, assign groups, set manager, maybe team setup, lots of steps.
Yeah, definitely not a 2-minute job.
Definitely not. But the 2-minute start, it's not writing the whole module. It might literally be open VS Code, create a new .ps1 file, and type the first line, maybe just the function wrapper. Function start Azure AD user onboarding. That's it.
Just the function definition. No parameters, no logic.
Nope. Or maybe even less. Maybe it's just connect as account. Or if the goal is, say, automating server hardening with Azure policy, the 2-minute start could be just opening the Azure portal, navigating to policy definitions, and maybe clicking create definition, or even just searching for the reference docs and pinning that tab in your browser.
That feels almost ridiculously small. Trivial, even. Why is typing just one line or clicking one button supposed to be so powerful?
Because the biggest cognitive drag, the heaviest mental lift, it isn't usually the work itself. We like the work, usually.
True. The tech is often fun.
It's the act of deciding to start. It's overcoming that initial, where do I even begin?
Yeah.
Feeling. Once you have that one line of code or that title on the document page,
Okay.
the task is subtly shifted in your mind. It's moved from the big, scary, intimidating category of to be started someday into the much more manageable category of in progress.
I see. It's logged in your mental workspace now.
Exactly. And if you get pulled away, which, let's face it, happens all the time in IT.
Constantly.
You're no longer restarting from absolute zero next time. You're just picking up where you left off. You're resuming motion, which is psychologically much easier than initiating it from a dead stop.
And the flip side of that, the real cost of waiting for perfection is that endless planning, that waiting for the 100% complete picture. It just leads to months, maybe years of zero actual progress on those critical tasks.
Zero. While the problem you wanted to solve probably got worse.
Right. So by accepting that imperfect start, embracing the messy first draft, the incomplete script skeleton, you absolutely guarantee at least some forward movement.
Oh, yeah.
And that tiny bit of momentum then fuels the next small action and the next. You're replacing that I'll do it later habit loop with a new one. Start now, refine later.
That's the core shift right there. Start now, refine later. Now, to really grasp why these tiny imperfect starts are so important, especially over the long haul, it helps to think about our time. Well, almost like money.
Okay, like budgeting time.
Sort of, but more like investments.
Yeah.
We need to view our time through this financial lens of time assets versus time debts.
Time assets and time debts. Okay, I like that framing.
Yeah, it helps a technical mind, especially, quantify the long-term value of doing something, even imperfectly now. It connects today's small actions to tomorrow's freedom. Or lack thereof.
This really resonates because, sysadmins are already hyper-aware of technical debt.
Exactly.
That cost of choosing the quick and dirty fix now, knowing you'll pay for it later with instability or rework. This sounds like applying that same logic to how we manage our workday.
Absolutely. It's the same pattern. So time debts. These are the tasks that seem urgent, demand immediate attention, but they actually accrue interest. They steal your future time or they magnify problems down the line.
What are some classic sysadmin time debts?
Oh, the list is long. Classic firefighting mode is pure time debt. Constantly reacting to every email the second it lands.
Yep, guilty.
Applying undocumented one-off fixes to production servers just to silence an immediate alert without figuring out the root cause.
Patching the symptom, not the disease.
Exactly. Or repeatedly doing manual user provisioning or password resets or group memberships. Every single time you fix something manually without documenting the why and how, or better yet, automating it, you are basically signing up for more future debt.
Yeah.
You're guaranteeing you'll do that same task again and again.
It really is like the high-interest credit card of IT work, isn't it? Feels good for a second, problem solved, but the long-term cost is massive.
Totally massive. Now, contrast that with the time assets. These are the things that require that upfront effort. Often that effort involves a messy, maybe slightly dreaded, imperfect start.
The stuff we tend to put off.
Right. But the key is, these tasks save you significant time or effort or Just as importantly, cognitive load down the road, often indefinitely. The returns compound positively over time.
Okay, give us some high-value examples. What does a time asset look like for Windows or Azure Admin?
Okay, a great asset is starting, even roughly, a Terraform or Bicep template structure to standardize how you deploy Azure resource groups or common services,
Even if it's incomplete at first.
especially if it's incomplete. Maybe it only handles VMs and storage counts initially. But every single time you or your team needs to deploy a new service, that basic template saves configuration time, reduces errors, ensures consistency. That's a huge asset.
I see.
Another classic asset, building a simple PowerShell module. Maybe just for auditing specific things like network security group rules or Azure AD conditional access policies, even if it only handles, say, 50% of the scenarios you need right now.
Better than 0%.
Way better. Those 5 or 10 minutes saved every time you run that partial audit across 20 different checks a week. That time adds up incredibly fast, and it directly reduces your future toil, your future stress. You're buying back future time.
So burnout, it isn't just about working long hours. It's maybe more about running a time debt-heavy existence.
I think that's a huge part of it, yeah.
You feel overwhelmed because maybe 80% of your day is spent just frantically paying the interest on old repetitive problems or dealing with the fallout from undocumented fixes.
Instead of building the infrastructure, the assets, they would actually free up your future capacity and prevent those problems in the first place.
That's a powerful diagnosis. So investing in that automation, that documentation today, even if the first version is clunky or incomplete, that's how you directly reduce the long-term cognitive load and the emotional stress.
Yes, and the imperfect start is the key enabler because it ensures you actually begin building that asset instead of waiting forever for that mythical 3-day block of uninterrupted perfect build time that just never arrives.
Okay, but here's the rub. The list of things a sysadmin could automate or should document or needs to fix properly, it feels endless, right?
Oh, absolutely. Prioritization is critical.
If everything feels urgent or everything feels important, those assets, the important but not urgent stuff, they just never get built. We need a filter. And the source material gives us one, the Van Waff rule.
Yes, this is such a powerful, almost brutal prioritization hack. It's sometimes called the 255 rule. The exercise is, you list out, say, 25 career goals or major projects or areas you want to improve.
Okay, big list.
Then you force yourself to select the absolute top 5, the 5 that will contribute most significantly to your team's mission, your strategic goals, maybe your own career growth. The real game changer.
It's a critical few.
Exactly. And this is the really hard part, the part that requires discipline. You consciously, ruthlessly ignore the remaining 20. You actively avoid working on them.
Wow, ignore them. That feels wrong somehow. What are some examples of those 20 items that often trap sysadmins? The things that feel productive but are actually low-leverage distractions from the top 5.
Oh, there are so many seductive ones. For sysadmin, the 20 items could be things like spending a whole afternoon tweaking the custom color schemes on a Grafana dashboard that only you look at.
Guilty again. It looks cool, though.
Or optimizing a small utility script from, say, 100 milliseconds runtime down to 50 milliseconds when the script only runs once a week anyway.
Yeah.
Micro-optimizations that don't matter. Or diving super deep into researching some niche container orchestration technology that's fascinating, sure, but completely irrelevant to your company's current roadmap or problems.
These are perfectionist traps, aren't they? Or just intellectual curiosity gone wild.
Exactly. They are often interesting, but they steal your limited time and energy away from the truly critical top 5 assets. Things like completing the core automation for server patching, or finishing the essential multi-factor authentication rollout across all users, or documenting the disaster recovery plan, the big rocks.
So the imperfect start connects here too. It's about applying your focused effort exclusively to those top 5 critical assets, even if your initial work on them is messy or incomplete.
Yes. Because if you fail to say no, a hard no, to the merely interesting or the merely urgent but not important 20 items, you will simply never have the sustained energy or focus required for the truly critical priorities. You dilute your force.
All right, so we've used the 2-minute rule to break that initial inertia. We've used the time asset debt model and the Van Waff rule to identify what we should be working on those top 5 priorities.
Building momentum.
Now, the next big hurdle, how do we sustain that momentum? How do we keep the PowerShell script evolving, keep adding to the documentation day after day against the constant barrage of interruptions, alerts, and, well, daily chaos.
Yeah, sustaining is key, and physics gives us another analogy here. We can think about sustained effort using Newton's second law. If a force equals mass times acceleration.
Okay, more physics. Effa, how does that apply to getting my patching script finished?
Well, think about it. The law basically says that to increase productivity, that's your acceleration, how fast you're making progress, you need to increase the force, that's your focused effort, applied to the most important tasks, that's the mass.
Mass as in the weight or importance of the task?
Exactly. Think of mass here as leverage. How much impact will completing this task have? So increasing productivity means applying focused effort, force, to high leverage tasks, mass.
I often see the opposite, though. SysAdmins applying massive effort, like working really long hours but getting very little acceleration. They're spinning their wheels.
Precisely. Because the force is scattered. It's applied to low mass, low leverage tasks. Or it's constantly interrupted.
So working hard isn't enough. You have to work hard on the right things with focus.
That's the key. Identify the high-impact, high-leverage tasks. That mass. For a sysadmin, that might be writing a robust script to automatically remediate configuration drift across hundreds of servers. Huge mass. Versus manually checking the configuration drift on 5 servers. Tiny mass, low leverage, even if it takes effort.
Got it.
So the actionable insight is identify those high mass areas, those top 5 priorities we talked about, and then deliberately apply concentrated, protected force focus effort right there.
Protective force, meaning?
Meaning dedicated blocks of time. Deep work sessions, where you are not answering emails every 5 minutes. You are not hopping into Teams chats. You are applying maximum force to maximum mass to achieve maximum acceleration on your most important improvement projects.
Okay, that makes sense. But then there's the resistance. Life fights back. This brings us to Newton's third law. Action-reaction. For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction.
Exactly. And this law might actually be the most practical day-to-day tool for managing energy and avoiding burnout. Think of it this way. For every motive force pushing you forward, there's an opposing resistive force holding you back.
Okay, motive forces. That's like enthusiasm for a new project, good night's sleep, coffee.
Yep, coffee is definitely a motive force for many of us. Focused work sessions, clear goals, positive feedback, those all push you forward.
And the resistive forces, the ones pushing back.
Stress. Lack of sleep, a huge one. Poor organizational skills, like a messy desk or chaotic file structure. Vague requirements. And maybe the biggest killer for knowledge workers. Context switching.
Oh, context switching. The productivity destroyer. You're deep in debugging some complex PowerShell pipeline, right? Total mental immersion needed.
Full focus.
And then ding, a notification pops up. Maybe it's a Slack message about lunch plans or a non-critical hardware alert from a test server.
Doesn't even have to be important.
Right. But the mental switch, acknowledging the notification, deciding if it needs action, maybe quickly responding, and then trying to re-immerse yourself back into that complex debugging flow, the cost is enormous.
It's huge
Yeah.
and often invisible. We don't account for it. But studies show that recovery time, getting back to that same level of deep focus after even a brief interruption, can take minutes, sometimes 15, 20 minutes.
Wow. Do that a few times an hour.
And your effective focused work time plummets. So here's the counterintuitive insight from Newton's third law. To boost your overall productivity and sustain momentum, it's often far more effective to reduce or eliminate the resistive forces than it is to constantly try and increase the motive forces.
So stop fighting the friction. Just remove the friction.
Exactly. You can only drink so much coffee, right? You can only hype yourself up so much. But you can drastically cut down the resistance that's holding you back.
Practically speaking, then, what does reducing resistive forces look like for a sysadmin? Beyond just, turning off Outlook notifications, which we all know we should do.
Well, doing it is the first step. But it's more than that. It means aggressively curating and simplifying your work environment, especially during those dedicated asset creation time blocks.
Okay, like what?
If you're scripting in PowerShell, your workspace ideally should contain only the code editor window and maybe the necessary documentation browser tab. Nothing else visible.
Close everything else. Ruthlessly.
Ruthlessly. The source material strongly suggests scheduling those focused, no-interrupt blocks. Put it on your calendar, treat it like an important meeting, and during that 90 minutes or whatever it is, you commit. Outlook is closed. Teams is closed. Slack is closed. Phone is on silent and out of sight.
Sounds blissful, but maybe unrealistic for some roles.
It requires discipline and maybe negotiation with your team or manager about expectations. But even short blocks help. Also, reduce physical friction. Is your desktop a cluttered mess of files and shortcuts? Take 2 minutes. 2-minute rule again. To clean it up. Create a clean slate. The goal is to lower the psychological friction, that constant low-level mental drag that prevents smooth, sustained motion on your important work.
Oh.
Okay, let's shift gears slightly and talk about the sheer cognitive load involved in technical work. SysAdmins, Azure architects, you're constantly making decisions, right? Configuration choices, security trade-offs, troubleshooting paths, architectural judgments.
All day long, the little ones and big ones.
Exactly, and this ties directly into something called decision fatigue.
Ah, yes. The idea that our willpower, our capacity for making good decisions, is like a muscle. It gets tired. It's a finite resource.
It absolutely is. And if you start your day spending that precious cognitive currency on 1,000 tiny, low-stakes, non-critical choices.
Like deciding which email to answer first out of 50. Or agonizing over the perfect variable name in a script.
Precisely those kinds of things. If you meticulously triage every single low-priority email first thing, or you spend 20 minutes debating the exact placement of a minor log file entry, or you scroll endlessly through firewall logs that aren't actually showing any critical anomalies, you have effectively used up your peak high-quality cognitive power for the day.
On trivia.
So when 2.0 BM rolls around and you suddenly need to evaluate a critical production change control request or architect a complex new Azure VNet peering configuration with on-prem connectivity.
You're running on empty, cognitively speaking.
You're running on fumes. Your decision-making quality plummets. There are famous studies showing this effect in judges. They tend to make harsher, more default decisions later in the day, especially right before breaks or lunch. They're fatigued.
Wow. So the goal isn't just to be busy all day. It's to strategically protect and allocate that high-value mental energy for the work that actually requires complex thought and judgment.
That's it, exactly. Over-polishing the visual elements on a monitoring dashboard that basically works fine. Or spending hours tweaking the aesthetic comments in a script that already functions correctly. That uses the same precious decision-making brainpower that should be reserved for designing security rollouts or planning major disaster recovery tests.
So what's the actionable insight here? How do we combat decision fatigue in a sysadmin role?
The biggest lever is automating minor decisions through standardization. This is absolutely critical for sysadmins and anyone in ops. You need rigid, predefined defaults for common tasks.
Examples.
Okay, think about Azure resources. Create a strict, non-negotiable, repeatable Azure naming convention standard for your organization, like RG Environment Service Location 001 for resource groups, or VMOS role instance num for virtual machines. Document it, publish it, enforce it.
So you eliminate the choice each time.
You eliminate the trivial decision. By having this firm default, you remove the need to pause and consciously decide every single time, what should I name this resource group? What about this storage account, this network interface? You just follow the standard. These seemingly small, standardized decisions collectively preserve a huge amount of your cognitive currency for the complex, unique problems that truly demand your expertise and judgment.
Standardization itself is like an imperfect start, isn't it? You draft a standard, maybe it's not perfect, but it's a standard, and it immediately starts paying back that cognitive energy. Huge long-term asset.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Massive cognitive asset return. And speaking of focusing on high-value work and protecting energy, the material points us towards another classic but incredibly powerful tool, the Eisenhower matrix.
Ah, urgent versus important. Good old Ike.
Good old Ike. It's simple but effective. You divide tasks into 4 quadrants based on 2 axes. Urgency, does it demand immediate attention? And importance, does it contribute to long-term goals and values?
Quadrant 1, urgent and important. Crises, deadlines. Quadrant 2, important but not urgent. Planning, prevention, relationship building, asset creation. Quadrant 3, urgent but not important. Interruptions, some meetings, other people's minor issues. Quadrant 4, not urgent and not important. Trivia, time waster.
Right. And the absolute key to long-term effectiveness, sanity, and building those time assets we talked about is to relentlessly, religiously pursue work in quadrant 2. Important, not urgent.
That's the zone. That's where strategic planning lives. Architectural documentation, automation efforts, skill development, exercise, taking breaks, all the stuff that prevents future crises and burnout.
Exactly. It's the proactive zone.
It's the quadrant the sysadmin perpetually postpones, right? Because it doesn't scream at you. It doesn't have an immediate deadline attached usually. How do you force yourself or your team to prioritize Q2 work when Q1, the urgent important fire drills, is constantly exploding?
Yeah, that's the million-dollar question. It requires conscious effort, time blocking, and ruthless gatekeeping. First, you schedule Q2 work. Ideally, first thing in the morning, using that peak willpower and protected time we discussed. Treat it like your most important appointment of the day.
Block it out. Defend it.
Defend it fiercely. Second, you must eliminate or aggressively delegate quadrant 3 tasks, the urgent but not important stuff. These are often other people's priorities masquerading as yours, like constantly running ad hoc reports for departments that could probably self-serve or getting pulled into meetings you don't really need to be in. Learn to say no, politely, or redirect.
Push back on the urgency when the importance isn't there.
Exactly. By actively protecting your mental energy, by minimizing Q3 and Q4 drains, and by deliberately focusing your prime cognitive power on Q2 assets, you systematically reduce the volume of future Q1 crises. The goal is a fundamental shift in your operational focus, from primarily reactive Q1, Q3 to primarily strategic and proactive Q2. Okay, so to really achieve true career growth and mastery as a SysAdmin or an Azure engineer, you have to get past this deep-seated fear of breaking things, or maybe more commonly, the fear of not doing it perfectly the first time.
That fear is potent. I'm not ready to deploy that new Azure policy, or this documentation isn't complete enough to share, or my script doesn't handle every single edge case yet. That thinking is the ultimate killer of the imperfect start.
It really is. And to manage that fear, it helps to break it down, to categorize it. The source material talks about the 3 types of failure, often visualized as a pyramid. Understanding these helps us see that not all mistakes are created equal, and not all carry the same weight or require the same response.
Okay, a failure pyramid. Let's define those 3 levels. What do they look like in the real world with actual technical stakes?
Right. So at the broad base of the pyramid, we have mistakes, or shallow failures. These are the most common. They're typically failures due to simple oversight, maybe fatigue, distraction, or just plain forgetfulness.
Like a typo in a JSON config file.
Exactly, a typo in a config file. Skipping a step in a documented multi-stage deployment process because you were rushing. Forgetting to select the correct Azure region when provisioning a resource. Simple stuff, usually caught quickly.
How do you fix these?
The source mentions how things like simple surgical checklists drastically reduced infections. It's the same idea for us. These shadow failures are largely solved by procedural fixes. Pre-deployment checklists, mandatory peer review templates, better runbooks, using linters for your code and configs, maybe some basic automated pre-flight checks in your deployment pipeline. Discipline and process.
Okay, so shallow failures don't need some deep soul-searching or architectural review. Just tighten up the process. What's the next level up?
That's strategic failures, or mid-level failures. This is more serious. This is where you chose the wrong fundamental path, the wrong tool, or the wrong solution for the problem, even if you executed it perfectly according to plan.
Give me an example.
Okay, maybe committing significant team resources to building out a really complex, expensive Azure Kubernetes service, AKS cluster, for an application, when that application's actual requirements could have been met far more simply and cheaply with an auto-scaling Azure App Service plan.
Using a sledgehammer to crack a nut.
Precisely.
Yeah.
You followed your deployment procedures correctly, avoiding shallow failure, but the overall strategy was flawed for the actual business need or cost constraints.
How do you address strategic failures?
These require deeper reflection, proper postmortems, blameless retrospectives, really analyzing the requirements again, maybe doing more proof of concepts or iterative testing next time. But crucially, these failures are necessary for learning. They teach you the limits of technologies, the importance of requirement gathering, the real-world trade-offs. They're valuable, if painful, lessons.
Okay, makes sense. And the top of the pyramid, the apex, the deepest, maybe most insidious kind of failure.
That's goal failures, or deep failures. This is subtle, but dangerous. This is when you actually know the right path, or the simplest path, or the most cost-effective path, but you lose sight of the ultimate goal, the why behind the work. You get lost in the process itself.
How does that manifest for a sysadmin?
It's often the sysadmin who continues to over-engineer a solution long after it has met the core business or security requirement. Maybe building a custom logging solution using 5 different integrated tools, making it incredibly complex and brittle.
When a simpler built-in Azure Monitor solution would have been 90% as good and way easier to maintain.
Exactly. You keep polishing, keep adding features, keep optimizing, not because the business needs it, but because the technical challenge itself is interesting, or because you're chasing some abstract notion of technical perfection. You satisfy your own curiosity, maybe, but you introduce unnecessary complexity, cost, and fragility. You lost the plot.
That hits close to home for many tech folks, I think. The love of the puzzle can overtake the purpose. So how does this pyramid help us embrace imperfect starts?
It helps by contextualizing risk. Most initial failures from an imperfect start are likely to be shallow failures, typos, missteps which are easily correctable with process. By starting small and iterating, you actively avoid catastrophic strategic failures because you're testing your assumptions early and often.
Uh-huh. So the insight is iterative improvement. Instead of waiting months to design the perfect enterprise-wide server hardening plan,
You roll out a basic working imperfect security hardening policy using Azure Policy, but apply it only to a small, non-critical sandbox environment first, your imperfect start.
test the waters.
Exactly. You monitor the results. Does it break anything unexpected? Does it actually achieve the hardening goal? You gather feedback from that small scope. You iterate on the policy. You fix the shallow failures. You confirm the strategy is sound, avoiding strategic failure. Then you gradually expand the scope.
So iteration based on feedback is the antidote to both paralysis and large-scale failure.
It is. And the key takeaway, the mantra, should
Yeah.
be, done is better than perfect. Ship the minimum viable product, the MVP script, the basic documentation outline, the initial configuration that solves, say, 80% of the core problem. Get it out there. Get feedback.
And actively resist the urge to over-polish that last 20%?
Yes, resist the urge to gold plate the thing, especially if it's already working well enough.
Mhm.
That last 20% of polish often takes 80% of the effort, yields marginal returns, and frankly risks drifting into that goal failure territory we just talked about.
Okay, now, here's where I think it gets really interesting. Let's talk about the emotional side of this. Perfectionism isn't just a productivity problem, it's an emotional burden. It breeds anxiety, doubt, comparison.
Oh, hugely. Because when you're striving for perfection from the outset, you're constantly comparing your own messy, half-finished, work-in-progress reality.
Your ugly first draft script.
It's exactly to the polished, finished, seemingly flawless outputs that other people share online, or in vendor documentation, or in conference talks.
The highlight reel effect. You compare your behind-the-scenes chaos to their stage performance.
Precisely. And that comparison is brutal. It fuels imposter syndrome. It makes you feel inadequate. But the emotional benefit of truly accepting the imperfect start is profound. It dramatically reduces that comparison doubt.
How so?
Because when you internalize that your first draft, your initial documentation, your MVP script is supposed to be messy, that it's just step one in an iterative process, you free yourself from that debilitating pressure, the pressure to somehow magically produce the polished final product on the first try.
You're comparing apples to apples, your starting point to the idea of a starting point, not to someone else's finish line.
Exactly. You start celebrating this simple act of starting. You celebrate the small iterations. You understand deeply that every small stumble, every shallow failure isn't a sign of your inadequacy. It's necessary feedback. It's data guiding you toward eventual mastery. It reframes the whole emotional landscape of doing technical work.
Okay, we started this conversation talking about that vicious cycle. The long hours, the burnout, the crushing backlog that so many sysadmins face. Let's bring all these ideas, imperfect starts, time assets, Newton's laws, failure types, back down to the daily operational level. How do we use these principles to finally break that cycle? What's the path to a more sustainable way of working?
Right, because at the end of the day, the ultimate goal of embracing imperfect starts isn't just about shipping more scripts or closing more tickets faster. It's about reclaiming control.
Control over your schedule, control over your stress levels.
Both. It translates directly into freedom. Freedom from overwhelm and hopefully a much better work-life balance. And a key mechanism for this is leveraging the power of the morning routine, specifically by tackling your most important task, your MIT first thing.
Using that peak cognitive energy we talked about before the day goes sideways.
Exactly. This is sometimes called the 21,000 rule, or simply eating the frog, or protecting your prime hours. The principle is you must dedicate the first solid block of your workday, maybe 90 minutes, maybe 2 hours, if you can swing it exclusively to your single most important task.
And crucially, before you check email, before you open Teams or Slack, before you take any non-emergency calls.
Absolutely critical. That time has to be sacrosanct. Defend it. Because that protected slot must be dedicated to building a time asset.
Linking it back. So the MIT should be Q2 work.
Ideally, yes. Working on that automation script, drafting that documentation outline, planning that phase security rollout. Researching that root cause, whatever represents the highest leverage activity for preventing future problems or building future capacity.
So you guarantee measurable progress on something truly important and asset before the day's inevitable flood of time debt starts accumulating and hijacking your focus and energy.
Precisely. And psychologically is huge. If you know by 10:00 a.m. that you've already secured a solid 90-minute win on your most critical long-term project, the chaos that inevitably follows feels far less overwhelming. It's less damaging to your sense of accomplishment, your motivation, your sanity.
Okay, but I have to push back a little here. Play devil's advocate for the sysadmin listening who's thinking, my morning, I don't control my morning. A production system could crash at 7 a.m., P1 tickets happen.
Wow.
How do you implement the 2-minute rule or protect MIT time when your job is inherently reactive, when fires are constantly breaking out?
That's the core tension, isn't it? The constant battle between proactive and reactive.
Yeah.
The key here is protection, but also flexibility and strategic alignment. If your environment is genuinely that unstable, if Q1 fires are truly frequent, then your MIT must become the highest leverage activity possible to prevent the next fire.
So the MIT adapts to the biggest source of pain.
It has to. If the production database crashes every single month, causing chaos, then your MIT probably isn't writing documentation for something unrelated. It's applying the 2-minute rule to start the process of figuring out why it crashes. Is it undersized? Does it need query tuning? Should we investigate moving it to a more stable Azure PaaS offering? The MIT becomes tackling the root cause of the biggest fire.
You're fighting the recurring fire by building an asset, the asset of stability.
Exactly. You use the principles proactively to reduce reactivity. Now, if a genuine P1 fire does start during your planned MIT time, of course you drop everything and handle the crisis. That's Q1 work. It takes precedence. But the crucial discipline is, the moment that immediate crisis is contained, stabilized, you snap right back to your interrupted MIT. Even if you only have 5 minutes left before your next meeting, you reclaim that focus instantly. Don't let the adrenaline hangover from the crisis bleed into the rest of your proactive time.
That takes serious discipline. Resisting the urge to just cool down by checking email after a fire.
It does, but it's essential for breaking the purely reactive cycle.
So tying this all together, what does this really mean for the sysadmin? There's often this resistance to change, this feeling that perfectionism is somehow linked to stability. If I don't plan it perfectly, it might break.
Right. But the irony we've uncovered today is that the pursuit of initial perfection often creates the very chaos it seeks to avoid. It leads to the perpetual backlog, the overdue maintenance, the undocumented systems. That's what causes instability down the line.
Whereas accepting the imperfect start.
By accepting an imperfect start, you actually build momentum. You build stability through constant controlled iteration and feedback. You're always making small, manageable improvements rather than waiting for one big, risky, perfect leap.
Okay. And managing time assets and debt.
That moves you from constant reaction to considered strategy. You're consciously choosing to invest in a less stressful future.
Protecting mental energy.
Through standardization, ruthless prioritization like the Van Waff rule, and focused work blocks. That ensures you have high-quality decision-making capacity available when you face those truly complex, high-stakes problems.
So these small, daily, often imperfect decisions, they compound.
They compound powerfully over time, leading to better career health, higher performance, less stress, and ultimately transforming you from feeling like a constant firefighter just trying to keep up into feeling like a confident architect who is proactively shaping a more reliable and efficient environment.
That is a really powerful synthesis. Okay, let's make sure everyone listening has some super clear, actionable takeaways they can jot down right now. What are the key points for their notes?
Okay, 4 main things. 1, break the inertia. Find your most intimidating task right now and apply the 2-minute rule. Write the first line of code, draft the document title, open the portal page. Just start.
2 minutes. Got it. Number 2.
2, kill resistive forces. Be ruthless about simplifying your work environment during focus time. Silence the notifications. Close the unnecessary apps. Prioritize reducing friction over constantly trying to boost motivation. Make it easy to keep moving.
Number 3.
3, ruthlessly prioritize. Identify your absolute top 5 critical asset-building tasks. Using something like the Van Waff rule, focus your prime energy there and consciously say no or not now to the less important 20 items that try to steal your attention.
Focus on the big rocks. And number 4.
4, Automate minor decisions. Use rigid standardization for common tasks like naming conventions, basic configurations, deployment steps. Preserve your finite mental energy and decision-making power for the truly complex problems that require your expertise. Don't waste it on trivial choices.
Excellent. Okay, so here is the challenge for you, the sysadmin listening right now. No more delaying. Pick one thing, just one item from that backlog that's been nagging you. Maybe it's documenting that complex Azure virtual network setup. Maybe it's finally starting that long overdue patching strategy document. Maybe it's writing the very first, simplest function for an automation script you've been dreaming about. Pick one and apply the 2-minute rule right now. As soon as this deep dive ends, go start the messy, imperfect first draft.
Because, as we've discussed, mastery isn't born from some initial flawless launch pad. It's forged through iteration, through feedback, through learning from those shallow and strategic failures. Mastery is fundamentally incompatible with being paralyzed by the fear of imperfection.
If your true goal is mastery in Windows administration, in Azure architecture, in managing complex systems, the path inevitably requires making mistakes, breaking things occasionally in controlled ways, fixing them, learning, adapting, repeating.
That's the cycle of improvement.
So here is our final provocative thought for you to take away and chew on. What is that one specific thing you are resisting starting today precisely because you are afraid it won't be perfect, afraid it won't meet some impossibly high standard right away?
Identify it.
And then go make the first messy mistake on purpose. Recognize that starting imperfectly isn't a weakness. It's actually the highest leverage strategy you have for making real, sustained progress. Go get started.